Ladies and gentlemen, we have esteemed panelists with us today to share their insights with respect to their business strategy and operations. And I would like to take a minute or two to introduce the speakers to you. We have with us today Mr. Amit Grover, Executive Director, DLF Office Business. Mr. Grover is a seasoned commercial real estate professional with 24 years of experience. He has been with the DLF for over 16 years. He has driven entire of DLF's office business from a portfolio of 1.5 million square feet in 2003 to 30 million square feet by 2017.
So all those records are available in the history.
Next, we have with us Mr. Roshan Gowda. He's the lead for India Corporate Real Estate from Accenture. As the corporate real estate lead, Mr. Gowda's role encompasses the complexities of real estate transaction, workplace build-out, and space management across an 18 million square feet leased portfolio in India. Mr. Gowda is also the APC construction lead for Accenture. Next, we have with us Mr. Rajesh Pandit, Managing Director, Global Workplace Solutions and Property Management, CBRE South Asia Private Limited. In his role, Mr. Pandit manages CBRE's occupier client strategy in India, providing central coordination around core GWS client base across the country. With an overall industry experience of over 26 years, Mr. Pandit intricately drives business management systems and has worked on key projects including IT parks, call center, BPO facilities, office campuses, and residential complexes. Next, we have with us Mr. V. Narayanan, Senior Vice President, Head of Property from Standard Chartered Global Business Services Limited. Mr. Narayanan is an experienced corporate services person with an experience of working in the defense and information technology and services BFSI industry. Skilled in crisis management, negotiation, operations management, facility management, and administration, he is a strong real estate professional with more than 27 years of experience. Next, we have with us Mr. Devashish Panda, India Center Head, TransUnion GCC. Mr. Devashish Panda is responsible for the management and functioning of the overall GCC operations and serving as an innovation hub for TransUnion Global Products and Solutions. Mr. Panda has over 23 years of experience in IT services and has held onshore and offshore leadership roles and managing global delivery responsibilities. TransUnion GCC. Mr. Devashish. Next, we have with us Mr. Neeraj Bansal, Partner Advisory Services, Head Corridors Asian, Hong Kong, Taiwan, KPMG. Mr. Neeraj Bansal is a senior partner who is currently the member of KPMG Global Steering Committee on BCRE sector. He holds a strong relationship with the member firms across Asian, Hong Kong, and Taiwan with a focus on growing inbound and outbound business operations. He was national leader for the building, construction, and real estate BCRE sector for KPMG in India from 2013 to 2019 and led the growth of the sector. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be joined by Dr. Swati Maheshwari later during this session. She is an internal medicine specialist with over 15 years of experience, and she would be addressing on the precautionary measures for employees when they're joining back to work, having comprehensive knowledge of both child and adult health issues. I would like to thank DLF for coming on board with us for the virtual conference. Now, before we begin today's session, I would request all the participants to be on mute, and you may post your questions in the chat box. We will try to take the questions accordingly. With this, may I now request Mr. Neeraj Bansal to take the session forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with you in this virtual setting. I thank the organizers, CII, Shaikat and Archana, and from DLF, Amit and Mohit for orchestrating this entire webinar and also helping us with a wonderful lineup of panelists. Thank you very much for that. We have developers, leadership from the occupier community, and facility management organizations to share with you the views that they have, from a COVID-19 impact, that we will unfold in some time. So thank Debashish, Roshan, Narayanan, Rajesh, Amit, Dr. Swati Maheshwari, who will join us a bit later as well. Welcome once again to the webinar, and thank you so much for taking your time to address our audience today. I look forward to an engaging discussion. The topic for today, ladies and gentlemen, is corporate real estate, impact, preparedness, and opportunities. Did you hear it right? Opportunities. In these times of pandemic, yes, you heard it right. We will hear more on this as we get into the later and the last section on the panel discussion on the opportunities. Let me now move over and quickly discuss in next 6 to 7 minutes, in terms of an overall context for today's discussion. By now, it's abundantly clear to majority of us that this pandemic has had a major impact on all aspects of our life, the way we live, the way we work, the way we socialize, pretty much everything has got impacted with that. It is altering behaviors, it is altering spending patterns, travel habits, supply chains, service delivery models, and also with that, a consequential impact on the lifestyles, markets, and also the economy. Not only Indian economy, the global economy there. But is it all deep red? There are some green and upward movements. Several of the Indian businesses can possibly insulate themselves from the global supply chain disruptions due to the relatively lower reliance that they have on the intermediate imports, and also the fact that there is certain amount of growing consumption currently on the essential goods, as we see that today, with the major spending happening on that, and is also helping to grow some of the allied chains and alliance as well there. I'll just stop here. Archana, can we have the presentation on?
Yes, please.
You can move to the slide 2. The next slide, please. So while the slide comes up, essentially, if we see that the various sectors, while there is a significant impact that we are facing today with the on the demand side with zero or near zero sales in April, there was a lot of news on the automotive side with zero sales happening for the players on that side. On the supply side as well, there are, except for the essential businesses, there has been an impact on majority given the fact that all business activities have been closed. At the same time, as you can see on the screen, there are several sectors, which are seeing a positive, upward trend as well in terms of agriculture, pharma, essential goods, in terms of the FMCG area aspect of it, healthcare, hospitals, e-education has come up as a very strong contender, from a growth perspective with very quick changes that have been brought in. So some of the players which were already into this are seeing tremendous amount of growth. Online content and gaming has been at an all-time high. So while there is an impact which is coming in with respect to the demand side and supply side on the core sectors and the other sectors around it, but there are areas where there are green shoots as well there. Can we move to the next slide? So when you look at the impact on the commercial real estate or the CRE aspect of it, I think until 2019, I mean, CRE was a top ranking real estate asset class with steady increase in supply and absorption rate. Vacancies were all down, and we were looking at rentals that were rising. There was an increase in demand in terms of net office space, as there on the screen, that rose by almost 40% in 2019 across 7 major cities to 47 million square feet, driven more by IT, ITS, and co-working operators. But while we move to the 2020, there are strong headwinds, there with the COVID-19 impact on the economy, and also which has a direct correlation with the CRE demand and supply. And at the same time, traditional sectors of office may demand they will face challenges on the demand side, and we will discuss this more, as we get into the panel. But there are growth aspects expected in the areas from the e-commerce, pharma, logistics, IT BPO sector that will drive the demand for offices, warehouses, and data centers there. Can we move to the next slide? With that, let's move quickly to some of the challenges that are there in corporate real estate and trends as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? So when we look at some of the challenges around it, there is a lot of buzz right now in terms of flexible working or work from home. Is it a new norm, or is it an immediate response to meet some short-term need? Clearly, it is expected to continue as a business continuity program module. It will drive the need for change in workspace design and protocols. There is also a requirement that to say that if we are all, some parts of the work will be done from work from home, given the spaces that we all have, majority of them have, would there be a requirement that the future housing projects would be requiring that there could be a dedicated workspace area as well, which is fitted with a certain amount of facilities so that you can work from home in a way from your complex, with probably a requirement to have a daily booking that you could do in terms of the spots times that you would like to use the facility around it. uh, we will discuss this, on the social aspect of it much more. I will be chatting up with Dr. Swati Maheshwari on the work from home and its impact on employees' health and well-being. She's kindly agreed us to join for a few minutes. We'll bring her in the middle of the panel discussion there. But social getaway is a human necessity, and that is something which has come up in the context of work from home in terms of the fact that offices are not only from a work perspective, but they have an impact on the productivity and also the overall well-being. When people are able to get to the offices, and many of us are feeling that today as a challenge around it there. So it seems that real estate developers and occupiers both will have to reorient and also put in strong amount of effort to restore the confidence, of the employees in returning to office, and they will need to have some specific measures in place in terms of how they respond, how they plan, and how they recover. And that's an area as well that we will try and deep dive, in the panel discussion there. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, let me get straight into the panel. If you could move to the next slide, please. We have divided the panel into three parts in terms of preparedness to resume work, impact of COVID-19 and trends, and then we will also look at the opportunities arising out of COVID. So with this, we would begin the panel discussion. Let me remind my panelists that given the virtual setting, it would be helpful to get their views in about 3 to 4 minutes for each question as the discussion starts there. So we can close the presentation now. Devashish, let me get you here as a business leader. If you could help us understand that in these entire times of COVID, where there's so much of uncertainty, so much of challenge, how did you ensure the safety and improve the morale, and also ensure the healthy engagement of the workforce? From as many of them would be working from home at the current time. What were some of the challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Good evening, Neeraj. Good evening, the audience. So, I mean, if I look at the way this pandemic has come in, and if I look at the work environment we had before, it was like, I can put a quick analogy to talk about it. We were probably standing on a beach with a very soft sand, and we were having a business as usual. What has happened is pandemic has swept us into the sea. So we are trying to learn now how to swim, because we have to swim and we have to look at this change as a skill, right? So that's the most important way I'm looking at this analogy. Now, the biggest challenge, not just for us, but for any organization when this happened, was two important aspects. One was, how did you maintain business continuity? That was the key thing, because business has to run. And the second piece we looked at is, how do you maintain the employee well-being? Because many will be new to this change. How do you maintain the employee well-being? And how do you ensure there is a symbiotic relationship between the two? Because one is completely intertwined with the other. How do you? So there were significant challenges, and in terms of getting this two up and running, not just for a few days, but for an unforeseen period of time, which is still there. We have been reasonably successful till date in terms of how we are overcoming this, and I can call out a few things based on our experience in my organization, as well as what I have talked with some industry leaders. The most important thing I will say is actually having a culture of trust and support. That's very important to me, your employees are the best asset, whether they're working from office, whether they're working remotely, or whether they're unable to do the job. The overlying theme for me and for our organization, which has been successful, is the employees are the best asset, nothing else. The second piece we looked at is when we made this transition to ensuring the two challenges which I talked about, we looked work from home more as a work-life integration rather than a work-life balance or working from home. So the subtle thing there was looking at work from home as another day in office. That was extremely important. What I've seen in the past, and when I talk to some of my colleagues in the industry, many employees view this work from home with a little bit of a guilt because they feel, okay, I have got a privilege and now I'll be using it. As a result of that, they sometimes end up working, putting in a lot of hours, and brings in burnout pretty quickly, brings in a lot of associated ill health, which is connected to that, which we are starting to see in some associates across the globe. So that something has to be, we ensure that that doesn't creep in. For example, I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and he was saying that he's setting up alarms to have food during when he's working. Associates get up in the morning early, they log in into the computers because there's no commute time. They continue to work late in the night because they have nowhere to go outside. So it's extremely important how do you ensure the work-life integration happens, how the effective time management happens. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where it is just work. I mean, the life just takes a backseat. The third piece we looked at was how do we ensure there is an employee connect? We did a lot of virtual employment engagements, not necessarily just to the healthier aspects, like we talk about meditation and all the stuff, which we do. At the same time, we looked at also a lot of collaboration events in terms of games, in terms of how you treasure hunts, music, so the connect still remains. And I'll tell you how many calls I have been into. You have a kid sometimes talking from the behind, you have a pet barking from behind. Those are absolutely brightens my day. So I will say this has been a change which, though thrust upon us, is not necessarily bad in a way, because it is something which is helping us to see some other perspectives, how we approach work, how we ensure business continuity is there while we maintain the employee benefit. Neeraj?
Wonderful. So I kind of was, since most of us are working from home, and I'm on the same board, so can relate to a number of things which you said. Clearly, I think the takeaways that you said in terms of, the culture of trust and support, that's come to be tested, in these times. And then from, the phrase which you used, work-life integration, I think that's a very key, aspect of it. And I would request that, as we kind of go forward, we will while we will work more on the changes that are being needed in terms of the workspaces aspect of it, but we will touch upon this as we kind of move further pandas as well there. So with this, let me bring in Narayanan, yourself over here. Given the fact that you are one of the largest occupiers, in terms of Standard Chartered and working with multiple developers as well, what kind of measures are you establishing currently, with respect to return to work, safely, for people? Because as we're looking at, we are on the lockdown 3.0, and there is a strong talk which is currently happening from resumption of work, with proper safety and some of the guidelines around it. There is a lot of concern from employees' perspective. There is a concern as occupiers as well. So if you could help us with some insights in terms of some of the measures that you are putting in place currently and expectations that you have, from the developers as well, that would help our audience to, as many of them would be preparing currently as well to kind of get to work, there would be some learnings for them as well.
Thank you, Nikhil, and good evening, all. Let us approach this into two aspects. One is employees' life cycle. Another one is how the organization, how it is going to be get prepared, and what is expectation from the developer. So first, when employee currently the cities where we are operating at this juncture or in an immediate future, there is not going to be any public transportation system, and driving of private vehicles are going to be not at ease. So you would be requiring organizational support for transportation to bring in the employees who were whichever minimum number. Immediately as soon as the lockdown is getting open, you are not going to rush and bring whatever number of people permitted by the government. We will also assess and go as per the requirement. So we will have a minimum number of required people, observe for 2 weeks how the situation develops and progress as per that. So now when you're bringing employees from home, it starts from your vehicle cleansing of vehicle, not getting people from the containment zone. Once you are coming inside the office with thermal scanner, sanitizing, ensure that taking into the office, all the protocols we were for what we were following before the lockdown was announced, but the COVID situation were in the country. All those things with an enhanced level we need to continue to do and monitor and work, continue to do that. When you come to the second aspect of how organizations are getting prepared and how expectations from larger complex where we are operate from, the main and foremost requirement is the strict visitor management control. You, to the great extent, you will be able to control our people, the known set of people, the employees who are expected to come, and the support teams which are going to work, that you have in control. But the control, what you don't have is the visitors who are expected to come. You can't completely shy away from getting a visitor. You, if you have to run the operations, you are expected to have some kind of a visitors. So how the big complexes where you have close to 50, 60, so like a DLF IT parks or wherever the big IT parks where you have 60 to 70 organizations working in from the same complex, how that is going to be managed, because that keeping control and doing controls within yourself is not sufficient. It has to be everyone need to do. Second, how the other co-tenants, how they are going to follow, what all the protocols they are going to follow. So a developer, what we expect is minimum is lay down a standard for everybody, minimum standard what need to be practiced for everybody in the organization, and that is very strictly adhered and monitored and practiced. That's what main requirement expectation from the developer side. Over to you, Nikhil.
Thank you very much, Saran. Taking this forward, Roshan, if I may come to you, as a lead for corporate real estate for Accenture, people are the biggest assets that you have, from workforce point of view, and many of them, as we were discussing just a while back as well, that there are challenges on work from home. There are challenges in terms of the in returning back to work as well. So, as Mr. Ran helped us with some of the insights in terms of what they are doing. If you could help us in terms of some additional insights that you are, one is from if there are any technology that you're leveraging, if there are certain measures that you're taking for giving your employees in terms of communication, in terms of certain word of guidance, some of the standards that you're laying down, that will help us to take this forward.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Neeraj. Good evening, everyone. I will not obviously get into too much of detail, but I think the core philosophy pre-COVID as well as now has to always be that we need to maintain a razor-sharp focus on customers and people. Everything else, be it real estate costs, operation, and the whole the hygiene factor around how do you get people back to work has to be on the periphery, right? Because extreme measures, extreme situations like this call for extreme measures. From a specific question in terms of the return to office initiative, first of all, we are in no hurry, right? The return to office program arguably is more complex and mammoth, even compared to getting the hundreds of people, hundreds and thousands of people to work from home in the first place, which was the exercise that all of us went through about 6 weeks back. The return to office is arguably even more complicated. I mean, if you have to skim the surface, a good baseline typically is that maintain the governmental and the WHO guidelines. But then you need to obviously go over and above. I'm sure everybody on this panel, as well as all the entire audience, agrees that one size does not fit all. Right? It depends on the kind of industry you're in. It depends on the complexity of your portfolio. It depends on the number of people itself, right? Now you could be talking about optimal transport, social distancing at the workplace itself, managing capacities on the production floors, cafeteria management, sanitization, etc. So all of that is par for the course. The key, I would say, has to be, Neeraj, that you need to ensure that you give people choices, and you also communicate that those choices are available and emphasize the security, safety comes first. I think that typically for us is becoming the bedrock on the basis of which we are planning this whole return to office. The communications that we sent out to our people also revolve around that the guidelines that the government, both state as well as central government, is giving out is to enable people to come, but that doesn't mandate that people need to come, and that those they don't even mandate the percentages of people that need to come. So we're taking it cool. We're making sure we're prepared. We are going back and checking with our people as well. From a technology perspective, I think there's a whole bunch of things. I also happen to be the sponsor for workplace technology for our organization. So technology in a way permeates everything that we do. The key for us is how do you use technology if it either improves an existing process or if it gives a better human experience. That is the kind of technology we want to use. So technology for us is permeated into how we do our rostering of cabs and transport itself. We've kind of digitized the cafeteria, so that kind of allowed us to get back to packed meals and packed lunches easier. So these are some of the, this is a flavor of some of the aspects that that we've been kind of trying to think about when we're looking at the RTO, the return to office program. We can obviously talk at length till the cows come home on this, but these are some of the key aspects, Neeraj. I hope that helps.
Sure. Thanks, Roshan, for that. Rajesh, may I bring you here? Given the fact that you are leading one of the larger IPCs that are there in the world, and the fact that you've got a huge facility management space that you're currently managing for very large organizations and large developers over there, if you could help us understand that from a facility management perspective, one, in terms of your own employees and workforce, some of the measures that you have put in place in terms of their training, in terms of some of the new norms that have to be followed, and secondly, from the tenants and your interaction with developers, right? What sort of new requirements that you are seeing are coming, and if you could touch upon some of the key ones, which if there are in the audience certain developers, certain tenants, and also some of the employees, they would get some sense in terms of the how this is getting done and dealt with by some of the large facility management organizations there.
Sure, Neeraj. I'll try to do justice in the 3 minutes that you mentioned.
No,
but yeah, but I think like Narayan mentioned, it's not. So when you say like people coming back, employees coming back to offices, we're talking about instilling confidence in them, and we don't have to forget that we are not talking about any financial crisis in this current situation. We're talking about a crisis which includes your health and your family's health. So in this whole process of getting employees back, I think the way we are looking at is, how do we get them from the front door of their house to the front door of their office through the lobbies of a building. And frankly, we'll have to really prepare ourselves to convince the anxious workforce. And you spoke about emotion in between. I mean, this is a psychological situation wherein people will be at home, and here we are welcoming them and telling them, it's safe to come back. But my guess is that they will be expecting continuous, credible assurances that they're walking into safe environment. Now, basic stuff, I mean, in terms of, and I'm sure Roshan also touched something in between, how do you use signages, stickers, basically putting notices on display for updated safety, health, and wellness information and resources, for example. And it is not only for employees, but it is for visitors and occupants throughout the building and inside the offices. We're also talking obviously about higher level of hygiene standards, which obviously includes mandatory usages of masks, disinfecting vehicles that are being used, thermal scanning for checking of temperatures, and of course, we're now talking about real-time online solutions and the prescribed safe minimum distances. This also means on entry and exit. How do you have staggered approaches in the lift lobbies and the lift cars? How do you mark? How do you have reduced passengers? But without forgetting the fact that this also will mean inconvenience to employees and organizations, because it's going to take longer to reach their floors, for example. And this is something that, as users and as owners and occupiers, we'll have to accept it and get used to it. There is more focus on environmental controls, whether it is higher temperatures in offices or higher levels of humidity, basically to kill those microbial organisms. We're talking about making necessary changes to some of those shared spaces that the employees were used to, whether it is the gymnasiums or other shared spaces areas. And of course, online well-being programs are not going to become more popular. We also spoke about in between, not only technology from automation perspective, but also providing touchless solutions to the basic and to high level of products that are being used. Critically here, what will also happen now is there'll be more stakeholder engagement as you see, as companies mobilize the employees to come back, between the property managers, the supply chains, the tenants, the owners, because as I see, communicating with the users will be the biggest differentiator, because this will be the biggest ask now of providing them all the informations, giving them that comfort, sharing with all the ever-changing government regulations on daily and weekly basis, and also proving to them in terms of how are we following them on ground. And also, while we communicate from our side, we'll have to create channels of feedback for them so that they are able to give feedback to us, and which is obviously will hopefully instill that confidence that we are taking care of whatever the feedback that they are giving. But in the new normal, as they call it now, that's the buzzword. It's not about the facility managers or the developers or the RE leadership of occupier clients who will be responsible for such environments. We'll have to educate all the users, all the employees in terms of what to expect and how to behave in these offices. Appropriate behavior will be critical and important going forward to remain safe together. Personally, I'm speaking, I'm actually looking forward to hit my office, to meet our clients and colleagues in person and not meet them on the Zoom. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Rajesh. For this, sharing. My question was fairly loaded, with three parameters to be discussed on that. So thank you very much for giving our audience brief insights, on all of these aspects around it. So let me move now to Amit. Amit, you heard what the occupiers are wanting. You heard the expectations, or let's say the work with the facility management organizations like CBRE are planning or doing currently. If you could help us with two parts, two aspects there. One, in terms of how are you managing customer connects during these COVID times there, and what are the learnings that you've had from the support or the facilities that you may have extended to the tenants to help them continue with their operations. And with that, if you can add some of the, let's say, perspective in terms of, your preparedness, some of the measures that you're putting in place, in addition to what has been said so far, that would be helpful, for us.
Thanks, Neeraj, and thank you everyone for joining from the audience and obviously the list. Thanks for putting this together. Yeah, it's great to hear the occupier expectations. Devashish shared, and then Narayan and Roshan. So in a larger sense, a large developer who's running a multi-block or a multi-tenant office complex, there's a lot of responsibility in the current system to, one, reflect partnership as an overall relationship. Second, to be what is expected at the each of the tenants or the employees or the company's level. How do you bring those discipline at the complex level? The third is, as you rightly said, a very high level of communication connect, and that works in two ways. One is the connect with the decision makers or the key nodal points within the organizations who in turn can communicate to their employees. And second is a communication which the shop floor talks to the employee directly. When an employee enters into the complex, what is it that the messages which are at the entrance gates, what are the messages from the security, what are the messages at the building atrium level, what are the messages close to the elevator level when you're boarding it. So in a way, it's a combination of, I would say, two level of connect, one with the stakeholders in the organizations who are nodal CXOs, who in turn meet their employees, and they have the ownership of clarifications and addressing questions or in building internal SOPs. And second is directly a sense of delivery to every employee who works in our complexes. So pan India, we have about 300,000 tenant employees walking into our complexes in a regular day. So what we did in the current pandemic scenario is, in the beginning when the lockdown was there, the first 15 days, a lot of focus was to give handholding to the customers because they were shifting a bit of IT infrastructure, and laptops and computers to the employee homes. And at the same time, their backend IT teams were managing the servers and the entire IT infrastructure in the office. So a lot of focus was to get that up and running and handholding our customers to enable that piece so that there is the business continuity which is assured. And then I think the next 15 days, the focus started coming in terms of very high level of connect, in terms of understanding what pain our customers are going through. What is it that we can do in the current scenario? And I would say last 15 days, larger preparation is and preparation and the communication is from the view of how do we, get back the employees of our tenants in a phased manner, give them the sense of comfort by actual delivery of hygiene practices, by establishing SOPs, by also meeting the requirements of various government circulars and requirements which are coming in, which also get updated once in 15 days in some way or the other, to understand the requirements which each of the government circulars are establishing, both at the developer as well as for the tenant. And at the same time, kind of once the employee starts moving in, which they have started now in a gradual number, is to reflect that I wouldn't call it a policing, but a reflect initial hand holding that the sense of discipline or the standards are met by all the tenants. Because as Narayan said, the biggest responsibility is in a multi-tenant campus is that if one tenant is kind of meeting all the requirements, social distancing, hygiene, all the protective gear, whereas the other tenant employees are not, I think the developer role will come in is to bring that commonality so that all tenants and their employees feel comfortable with those operating standards once the phased movement starts coming back. So I think that will be an important area. But at the same time, at a macro level, this is the time to kind of be humble, be very sensitive to customer relationships. And that's what we are doing with a very high level of communication and a connect at this stage.
Thanks, Amit, for that. So with this, we come to a close of the theme one, that we had in terms of preparedness and return to work. I think there were, 3-4 words, which kind of stuck to me in terms of the trust and support, for employee perspective in this current time, the work-life integration, the fact that we have to, instill behavioral changes, in our people, how they use the workspaces, and the fact that, what Amit was stressing on the, fact that there is a lot of responsible and partnership behavior that is required as well, from the way the discussions and connects happen. And if I may say last, in terms of communication, I think in these uncertain times, need for communication or maybe over communication cannot be understated. whether it is from the to the employees or to the tenants or to the overall workforce or facility managers around it. So I think that remains to be a key area for focus around that. So with this, I will move to the next theme that we have in terms of impact and trends from emerging from COVID-19 and beyond. So let's move our gears to the fact that once we have resumed for work, and the fact that this is COVID's a bit here to stay for some more time in this year, and the fact that there are some disruptions that we've seen already. So some of the buzz that has been on today. So let's try and deal with that there. So let me get into the first part, which has been the most debated or discussed topic, which is work from home. Something which has got fancy of a number of organizations. There have been a number of media reports. So Debashish, if I can get you here, when you look at when after the resumption of work, in terms of the medium term and certain long term, do you see that there are workplace trends are changing? How do you see the work from home impact the corporate real estate industry?
Okay, so Dheeraj, if we look at the workplace trends over the next near term or the long term, right? Well, some of the things which are currently in place, they will go back to the old state where we were. Some of the things will be adapted in the new normal. And I'm sure corporate flexibility which work from home has brought in is definitely going to stay because there's a lot of positives if we can harness out from it. The second piece I took from the work from home is it is going to give a significant thrust to diversity in organizations, which was previously not been able to happen. So you have a wider access to a talent pool, which were currently not available because these restrictions were in place. However, having said that, right, this is more of, to me, increased flexibility. It's not a complete shift. Again, I will draw an analogy there. So when the LinkedIn came in and the LinkedIn profiles got created, resumes were expected to go away. They never went away, right? And if we look at the retail stores, all the Kirana stores we have all around, I mean, they didn't go away when the online came in. Yes, there is a competition, there is a challenge, but both coexist. So in terms of impact, it's one more competitor to corporate real estate, but then corporate office will start looking differently. How I perceive based on what we have seen, it'll be more about interaction. It'll be more about community meetings. It'll be more about how do you create more meeting spaces, more video studios, which is real time rather than just online. So there will be a significant plus there. Just like, again, the analogy, I mean, imagine using the local retail chains to do the last mile of their supply chains. So I will say both will coexist. And from an employee perspective as well, right? Employees may not like to go office every day. They will crave for a work from home. But when they work for 3 months or 2 months from work from home, right? They will not also like to work from home, because human beings being so collaborative, I personally feel it will be a good combination of two, depending on the organization or depending on the kind of function the organization delivers. It will be more of a middle path. Of course, the real estates will have a shift in terms of how they're approaching the demand, how they're building the offices, but I personally see this is a win-win. This is one more tool for organizations to become more efficient and the economy becoming more efficient as we move forward. That's how I look at it. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Debashish, for that. Since this is a topic, as I said, like getting debated quite a lot. Would like to hear views both from Narayana and Roshan, from yourself as well, in terms of these workplace trends from work from home aspect of it. How do you see that? Is it here to stay, or is it something which will really change? The requirements from the commercial real estate requirements point of view, also from an office space perspective, or is it that like what Debashish, it's again another way to coexist. So way that the demand will continue, but at the same time there would be certain requirements will change as well there. your views, Ryan, first, and then I'll go to Roshan.
I will see this in again. ITES industry as a larger one. If you see, there are three different but sectors are there. Okay, where you do a proper software development, what we call development side. Second, you have a knowledge-based working and rule-based working. Okay. In this, the first two sectors probably will have more this work from home or flexible working combination. But when it comes to your knowledge-based working, when you come the rule-based working, still you need to have a physical and motor infrastructure office because that requires a lot of regulatory approvals from multiple countries to facilitate that. Having said that, before COVID also this work from home is existing. Especially in the IT area where the development and the knowledge based working, where people are able to work from home, the facility was there. Today, when the work from home forced on everybody, there are certain sector of people who are able to, without any difficulty, able to move in and able to absorb and continue to work like what you are doing in the office, or you are able to put into the productivity. But there is another sector of people, you don't have the kind of facility, you don't have the kind of network capability, you don't have the kind of Wi-Fi connectivities at home, you don't have a proper ergonomical setup to sit and work, produce, you don't have the proper environment. So those set of people, you don't have a choice. You need to get back to office or you need to get back to a proper structured environment to get into that productivity level. Having said that, there will be certainly change will be there, but how much it is going to impact, how much it going to change the entire work design, probably we need to wait and watch how the things are developing, because today it is thrusted upon everybody that you can't come to office. Tomorrow when it becomes an optional, how much you are going to adopt sitting at home, like Devashish said, people want to come home. It's a people want to come to office. 3 months when I sit at home, I want to come back to office. I want to have my own cab, like Rajesh also earlier told. He wanted to see people in his cabin. He want to meet in person. That you can't take away. So that is going. How much it is going to impact? Probably we need to wait and watch. Drastic changes is not going to happen instantly. If at all the social distancing, maintaining all we will try to do is what temporary without obstructing the existing features, we'll try to manage that. But putting a big capex and completely changing the design, that is going to be a big ask, but we need to wait and watch how that is going to proliferate at a certain stage. Over to you, Roshan.
Thanks. So, when you speak about overall workplace trends, Neeraj, I'm going to go glass half full here, right? I'm a firm believer that what doesn't kill you is going to make you stronger. Because at 10,000 feet level, at 20,000 feet level, if you actually look at it from a perspective of an outside in kind of an approach, I feel that we as an industry are definitely going to get smarter, right? A lot of our traditional values and qualities, I see those coming back. For example, frugality of existence in general, optimization of travel, more efficiency to utilization, smarter use of real estate. I mean, these are things that I think somewhere down the line were getting lost in translation in the whole rat race of chasing revenues, chasing customers, and all of that. So a lot of that, mind you, they were already part of everyone's agenda, but they weren't like front and center. I see a lot of that coming back, right? Um, Now, if I give you some examples, right, there were a lot of key focus areas for a lot of people, not just for me and my firm, but there were a lot of key focus areas for us, even pre-COVID. Like, for example, efficiency in seat utilizations. I mean, to kind of express that through an example further, I mean, if you have 200,000 people in India, which we are very close to, a 10% vacancy rate is the size of a medium-sized company, right? So a lot of those things, while important, what this whole pandemic has helped us to do is that it has almost forced us into a proof of concept almost, right? We were kind of piloting a few things in terms of you utilize your seat efficiencies differently. So to kind of further give you an example, if there are seat numbers that are getting paid for by customers, right, then it wouldn't matter earlier. The point that a lot of us have been kind of championing is that even if it's being paid for by someone, it is still real estate, right? And do we kind of need it? Now, what has happened over the course of the last month or two is that we've been forced into a bit of a pilot. And what is now emerging after like 4, 5, 6 weeks of these lockdowns is that we're seeing results of we fared in terms of client resolutions, in terms of our KRAs, in terms of our customer contracts. The results haven't been too bad. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. So net, what I feel is, whilst overnight the world's not going to change, but a lot of these efficiencies are going to be a lot more important, including things like work from home. I won't obviously stick my neck out and say that, okay, 75%, 80% of my people are going to start working from home, because there's a lot more to see. Anything what we don't know, I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right? A lot of it is also crystal ball glazing. But the point is that some of those factors, which were anyways in as a part of a peripheral vision, are going to now become front and center, for the simple reason that we've seen some results, right? And now we have better metrics to talk about, what happens when, as my previous speaker spoke about as well, there are certain industries, certain businesses which lend themselves better to work from home. There are certain industries and certain value chains as well which don't lend themselves better. So I think all of that, we now have a much better understanding of how that pans out, and we have the ability to now superimpose back into a real estate and then take educated decisions about where to grow, how much to grow, and is there indeed part of a real estate percentage which itself can become real estate supply going forward, right? I mean, can we manage those internal synergies before we look outwards? So all of that's going to happen, but net, I'm a firm believer that there is a positive lining. We're going to become a lot smarter as an industry, and I think everything else, the entire ecosystem, like IPCs, developers, landlords, are going to adjust around that. So I don't see all doom and gloom. Thanks.
Well, I see some shine in Amit's eyes, when he hears this, conversation. Let me first go to
line, Neeraj, that last line was only for Amit.
Okay. Okay. So let me go to Rajesh first. Rajesh. I think you heard that there are some things which were already underway in terms of like what Shin was emphasizing. That this was not like it may have got accelerated by COVID, or the fact that there is some more experience which has come into people's perspective there. But there is a contrary view as well, right? In terms of the fact that what you mentioned earlier, Debashish and Ryan also kind of mentioned on the work from home part of it, that there would be certain amount of more integration of that. But from a workspace point of view, if you could help with your views on the fact that social distancing norms would kind of create a need for some larger spaces to come in there, and the fact that the social necessity, as we were calling it, it's a human necessity. So that element would continue to kind of weigh heavy on every large business organization as well there. So when you see this, that there is a one certain amount of requirement may shift for work from home, certain roles may be suitable for that, and the fact that there is a contrary thing that the offices may require more de-densification, if I may call it, right? So if you can help us with your views on this, I would say contrary views on densification, will that be something which will be a trend that we will see? Or de-densification, given the fact that that we are all talking about resumption to work, and the fact is work from home buzzes continue to currently happen there. So your views, Rajesh, on that.
Sure, Neeraj. I was hoping that Roshan will pass on the crystal ball to me, so for me able to give you a big story of what's going to happen in future. But if I was to just quickly see, till now our current practice was to do more with less space, which is how we've been working till now. And the way we are now looking at is, how do we de-densify to create that physical distancing that we now need to have, like we need to have. I mean, we know that we need to have. But frankly, too early to comment. But the way clients are looking at it at this point in time, they're saying that in short to mid-term, they're looking to alter the spaces for people to feel safe. And obviously, which may mean that in some industries, it could be reversal of open office trend. We may have to consider suspending hot desking for fixed seating arrangements. And obviously, it will differ from company to company. But it is obviously making us rethink in terms of how we were doing business till now. From an impact perspective, I would say there definitely there will be delay in decision making. Occupiers, most of our clients would want to reevaluate and rethink in terms of the decisions that they have to make. Obviously, in the short term, like you asked, de-densification will continue to be the mantra, as I see it. Depending upon how fast we can get some vaccination, will hopefully decide the future for us. There will be a hybrid model. You also mentioned in terms of there will be remote working policy. There will be more tools so that people are able to get smooth working from home culture and environment. And obviously, from offices perspective, better hygiene standards obviously will be something that will be the way forward. But taking you out quickly from offices, while we've spoken a lot from Accenture and SCB, if I was to take you to some other real estate segments like retail, for example, which obviously is the most hit at this point in time, from a long-term perspective, retailers would want to future-proof, similar business disruptions. Unprecedented, nobody thought of that something like this will happen. So they would want to future-proof it. They will obviously be spike in online retailing option, which you and me are all doing it. And obviously they will look at optimizing their supply chain. And hopefully they will be continue to have an increased dependence on revenue sharing structures. On the other side, if you were to look at industrial and logistics side, what is interesting is that while they started with a non-essential now, which earlier was only essential. So, from a long-term perspective, it is expected that there will be more, adoption of technologies for inbound and outbound logistics, which obviously may mean that they may have rotation-based drivers or contactless deliveries. And we will have to now diversify our interstate supply chain to reduce from single market reliance. And we are also expecting that there will be a short-term increase in space requirements coming in from the festive season. And maybe e-commerce players may want to prepone their long-term space requirements. Over to you, back to you, please.
Thank you, Rajesh, for that. While that was a very good segue, actually, to get into the next theme in terms of the opportunities section on that. But I'll hold that thought for just a few minutes. I will invite Dr. Swati Maheshwari. At this point in time, there. Dr. Swati, can you hear us? Dr. Swati, can you hear us? No? Achha, just to reconfirm, is Dr. Swati with us?
Yes, Dr. Maheshwari is there. Dr. Maheshwari, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Swati, can you hear us well?
Yeah, absolutely I can.
Okay, great. So, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Maheshwari.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. So you heard the the panelists talking about the fact that there are some of us who are quite clearly wanting to get back to office, back to normal, and there are also some business considerations for having people work from home, whether it's from a cost perspective, whether from a efficiency perspective. So there are views that are coming in there. So I wanted like a perspective from the health perspective, medical perspective there in that, saying that what is your view if the employees are working from home for longer durations? Does that impact their health and psychological? Is there any impact with them on them because of the isolation that they have?
Yes, definitely. I do feel that when you're working from home, because obviously it's difficult to draw lines between your personal hours and the work hours that you have, and kind of one important thing that strikes me here is that you're not moving around too much, and you're sitting all the time and working on your computers or your screen, and most of the time, and that has a lot of impacts on your physical health as well. And then there's another thing that is there, that it kind of isolates you from the rest of the team members that are there in the office and the other staff and colleagues. So because there's no physical eye to eye contact for that matter, as you actually step into an office, so that also impacts the overall health and the psychological setup of a person, because when you meet and people and all and everything, and then it's not always all about work. You have other issues to talk about, and you take a lot of social cues when you kind of meet people, and I think all that kind of impacts the health of a person and the psychological setup of a person. And once you are at your home, and you're kind of operating from there, then that actually goes away kind of, and you're just hooked on to the productive work that you're doing, and the rest of the things that actually kind of add on to the work that you do are some way or the other, they are not there in the picture. So definitely it does. Probably we need to work out ways as to how one would be how to increase the physical movement of a person, and not just sticking with the screens all the time and sitting, because you're not commuting anymore, you're not going up and down the stairs of your workplace, and you're not moving around for coffee and tea and all, which we usually do when we are there in an office. So all this gets cuts away, and once that happens, then the physical movement definitely is getting impacted, and we need to work on that as to how to bring in that element, so that you don't miss out on that. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Very much audible. Please go ahead.
Okay, I just thought that I lost the connection. Okay, and the other thing is that yes, this interaction that you have generally with your colleagues and all and everything. So some way or the other, we need to find a way to actually keep that going as well. Maybe it could be one of those informal sessions that you have at the end of the day when you finish work or something like that, where you can just freely chit chat with each other and discuss other things, because it's not just about work all the time. And that is something that needs to be built in, or maybe you could use some co-working spaces for that matter, and maybe that could be one way where you can have some interactions with the people sitting around you, and you're not just feeling as if you're at home, because you need sometimes people need to get into the groove to work as well, because when you're at home, it's difficult for you to switch from the home mode to the work mode and all. So I think all that actually needs to be worked upon as well, because this is a new kind of format. Though it was there, work from home was there, but then always that was like, okay, once in a week, or in some time, you take that leverage and do work from home, and that does not impact your overall well-being for that matter. But if you're going to do it at a stretch, and if that is going to be your next working mode, then there has to be a lot of things that need to be worked out, so that it doesn't impact you physically and mentally. And that I feel it would be very essential to actually kind of lay down the SOPs for work from home as well, because it could not just be any which ways you want to do it, because that would eventually start impacting a lot of the parameters of a person. So there has to be a structure around work from home as well, so that it doesn't impact you that much. It has to be from a person's perspective, from an individual perspective as well, and from the company perspective as well, as to how you integrate your teams, how do they still kind of have that social togetherness as well, and they are not feeling as if they are in an isolated silo and they are disconnected from the others that are there. because this is not just we are talking about physical distancing. It should not account to social or emotional disengagement as well. That should definitely be there. So we need to foster that sense of social togetherness, I feel, which has to be inbuilt in some way or the other. Obviously, the think tanks can think on that and see as to how to build in that concept into it, but you'll have to eventually do it, because the more a person gets disconnected, the more I think the teamwork would eventually get affected as well.
I
That's
think,
what.
what you're stressing on is the fact that, and I think I almost got reminded of the first week of lockdown, when we started working from home. The fact that you said, in terms of, putting in extra hours, not moving, blurring of lines between, various aspects of, work and the usual life that you have, so, and then the fact that there is a certain amount of isolation which, all of us are facing and faced as well around it. But having a, stronger regimen, and having a clear agenda to kind of not only talk about work, but also having some of the other aspects also pulled in is also an important part. So, Dr. Mashwari, while we spoke about the current situation, which is there from a long-term perspective, and your suggestions are very insightful and useful. Many of them are, let's say, are currently in process as well, by organizations, given the lockdown has got extended.
Sure.
If you could help us with, 3 or 4 things, if you could, briefly highlight to us, from the perspective of employees which are returning back to work, some of the things, precaution maybe that they should keep in mind. Also, if there is, 1 or 2 advice that you have, for the business leaders, that would help as well.
So are you talking about people who are stepping out of their houses and
People
going to
returning
work?
back to work, once the lockdown is lifted, people returning back to work, what are the 2, 3 precautions, 2, 3 things that they can do, so that they can, apart from the basic hygiene aspect of it, is there anything from, that they can take care more? And second is from the, if there's any advice that you have for business leaders as well, while they take this into account.
I think both the ends would be essential, because not just the person or the employee who's going back to the work. I think there are a lot of things in the logistics that needs to be managed by the business leader as well. So starting with the business leader, I would say, you need to kind of keep a register kind of a thing as well, as to whoever is coming in. They should be reporting as to by which means are they coming, the commute that they are doing, as to the transport that they are using, as to which one are they using. Because I'm just saying this because, once, God forbid, one of the case or anything comes out from the office or something, then there's a lot of contact tracing that needs to happen. Yes, so for that purpose, you need to have all these records and everything. Whoever is stepping in into the office, whether it's the employee or whoever is coming in, the clients, or whoever is coming in, you need to keep a register or something as to where they are coming from, what their address is, what their phone number is. And if any of them, I think it would be good if you could have a declaration from them as well, whether they were quarantined in the past, or are they could give a self declaration saying that they're not suffering from any flu like symptoms at present. So I think that would be essential, because you don't want anybody stepping in who has flu like symptoms at present into the campus, for that matter. So that could be one thing to start with. And second is somebody a team leader or somebody has to be appointed. It could be an HR professional or whoever, who ensures that the rest of the SOPs which have been laid down by the ministry and all and everybody for the functioning of the office and the campuses should be kind of adhered to. And they ensure that all these compliances are followed, and all the people are following all the rules and regulations that are there. And then the third important thing for them is to see that the social distancing is being maintained, and the staff, maybe you could operate at half the strength. And I think there are some guidelines which have been laid down by the ministry as well, as to what should be the strength and all. And the social distancings are maintained, and the sanitization as has been laid down in the guideline is being followed. And all the human touch points, wherever and whatever they are being sanitized during the day. So I think that would be essential. And in any case, any of the employer, anybody is having flu like symptoms or anything, then they should be asked to go back home and not work. So that should be ensured that they are not working there anymore, and they take rest. I would say, and then come back again whenever required. And I'm sure the rest of the other things would be taken care of because we already have a laid down SOP now with all the checkpoints there. So I think the rest definitely is there. And Arogya Setu, I think, has been made compulsory by the government for the even for the private, I think, as well.
Sure.
They should be having that in their mobile and all. But otherwise speaking, at an individual level, I would say yes, definitely mask is something that is as essential as the other things that you carry to the office. So you have to be wearing a mask, which could be a washable homemade mask, and that could be used, and not necessarily any a surgical or N95 mask, because I think that should be left for the healthcare professionals, because they might get deprived of those otherwise. So I think even for all the employees and all, even the business leader who's there can actually tell people that they could easily use washable homemade masks and not kind of queue up for the N95 or surgical mask. That is one thing. The other is definitely to maintain social distancing even while you are commuting. So the best is to use your own vehicle, but if they are not able to and they are using metros and buses and all and everything, then they have to be careful that they are not sitting close by to the others. They're leaving one seat and then sitting, and they're making sure that they're not around. And if anybody is sneezing, coughing or something, then they have to maintain a distance and even ask the person politely to, maybe to disembark or kind of use some other.
So essentially, you're saying that make yourself aware of the guidelines which are issued by your office, guidelines which are issued by the government. Follow them. And in case of any issues that you're facing, if there's any flu-like symptoms, do ensure that you report it regularly on a timely basis there in that. So with that, I mean, thank you, Dr. Maheshwari, for your time and to give us and our audience some insights with respect to the challenge of work from home, and also in terms of resumption of work, some of the precautions that they can have, there. Let me now move to, in the interest of time, let me now move to the third theme that we had. Rajesh, has kindly given us some of his view already in terms of the outlook that he sees from a commercial real estate perspective. There. Can I bring in Amit, you on this? If you could help us, with your views on commercial real estate in terms of offices, retail malls, houses, data centers. How do you see some of these requirements coming up? And I can see in the chat box as well, there are some questions that have come in relation to that, in terms of what would be the demand and absorption that you see more from an industry perspective.
Thank you, and great insights so far. So was just absorbing. I think one is at a macro level. Is we watch. I mean, I don't think next 5-6 months will give us a real visibility of any strong long-term trends on change in behaviors and all that. And as mentioned, that even this phenomena of partly work from home and all, it's been enforced upon largely. It's like a situation we are going through is more like a medical. It's not that the science of making buildings is not like just 2 years old or something. It is over 200-300 years old, and there's been a lot of research always. And last 10 years or so, I think there's a lot of research in connecting the human behavior, and the very need of why these new complexes are being built. So the question of why come to office has been in format of we've seen some of the big tech companies like Apple a whole building to create a sense of an innovation center where best brains all come together, bring the technology to the next level. We've seen companies like Salesforce, who's right in the middle of San Francisco, and they want to be there because they believe that their employees should be connected to the cities which they. Likewise, in India, kind of created the cyber hub, cyber city, horizon center. So there is, the science around why come to office and why buildings. An opportunity where going forward, once we come out of this 5-6 months, the complexes which have able to evolve and rather even social sense is a norm, but fundamentally after we pass through this phase and come out clean and from the virus, the fundamental reason of why employees like they want to meet real people, as Rajesh said. You want to have deeper conversations, and more importantly, the most businesses would thrive in the future on innovations, on new format of technologies, new format of solutions to their customers they're working from, and that will come through very deeper conversations across organizations. And likewise people connect with their customers. So we believe, I think once things settle down, it'll come back. I mean, good, someone touched about the point about Dr. Maheshwari talked about the health issues related to work from home. Let's not forget, last 10 years, the top interior firms have worked so hard in their research on those and then there are tables in the offices which have been designed, which kind of have auto sensor moves up and then reminds you that we keep sitting kind of stand and all that. So I remember some of the clients telling us that the average chair cost in their office is now 70 to 80,000, simply because they kind of are taking care of, and the whole infra in the office has moved up value chain in taking care of the well-being and the happiness of employees. So there are those challenges are there which to do a limited it can at home. And I think the last bit I would like to say is, most cities, it's a very interesting theory that last 20 years of growth of India, it's the same 6 cities which have grown, which coming up to be bigger cities to work in these mega operations, larger buildings, bigger complexes. They're okay with taking a suboptimal residential accommodation, if I may say, in the first 5 to 6 years of their career, because the
ಏನು ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ ಗಾಡಿ ಇದ್ದ ಗಾಡಿ ಪಟ್ಟದು
that some of the complexes, the need to focus on the employee need a very high level of specialization to manage. It need very high level of specialization and customers, employees on the basis the CXO engagement on their areas, and at the same time a very strong eye on kind of implementing the systems and SOPs at a complex level, so as to bring those standards by you feel the opportunity will, I mean, that some of the companies. Yeah, standalone buildings, be able to and the kind of larger handholding which would be required forward places. Others are, I mean, we've spoken about de-densification, which is expected to bring in some more demand in commercial real estate because the footprint of the offices the same tenants are using may increase. We've also heard comments from LASCOM chairman. We also mentioned that a lot of digitization will work and bring in some new opportunities. We've also heard as a result of a lot of purchasing behavior build in the requirement for offices for e-commerce companies, will also build in requirement for companies. And likewise, I think at a macro level, if all goes well, India will be a winner compared to a lot of other countries.
Sure, I think there is a certain amount of voice distortion that we're facing, audio distortion at your end. But I think we got a lot of perspective.
Opportunities, some more from opportunities in India. So they will be settled down. A lot of green shoots which are they.
Amit, we're facing a lot of audio distortion at your end. While I think we've got a lot of perspective from you as well in terms of the some of the immediate impact as they're being felt, and also in terms of the whether this is a medium term or a long term trend around it. And if there is a time permit, then I will come back to you. Let me quickly bring in for the last couple of questions that I had in terms of Debashis, if we can get you here. There's a lot of talk right now that in terms of that will India be more favorable versus other locations for in terms of global organizations as they kind of ramp up their capacity as they face certain amount of cost pressures. So what is your view in terms of US and EU? Will they see India as a larger space for outsourcing? Because we hear contrary views coming in from this in this space.
So yes, from my personal viewpoint, absolutely yes. Because if you look at US or for that matter, global organizations, the reason they come to India, there will be four parameters. One will be resilience, which means you can run the business at any given point of time. Effectiveness, which is around quality and cost without compromising security. So these are the four things which any organization, whether IT, non-IT, look at. And what we have seen over the last 60 days, all these four have been effectively demonstrated. In fact, 4 million IT workers moved to WFH overnight, and they were able to run continued business. So that's a strong tick mark uptick. The other piece, if I look at, is this regional concentration risk. This pandemic clearly showed that the developed countries are not immune to global risks. So rather than concentrating their work in a specific country, which is their own, they look to diversify. And in the start of diversification, India is pretty favorably positioned for that. Of course, the China piece is there. Many countries will start decoupling their economies with China to a lot of extent. That will open up a lot of the supply chains may get reduced with China, and I feel because India and China have a lot of similarities, we can potentially be the next manufacturing hub. So I see a lot of positive parts provided the pandemic comes a quick closure. However, and when I mean a quick closure, of course, a period of 24 months into 24 months, if that doesn't happen, the downside risk, if you look at, is like currently US is doing on the visa and all that stuff, it can potentially trigger deglobalization. When I mean deglobalization, people will want to restrict their internal work. We go back to the old Keynesian models where we generate jobs for our community, we create our own demand, and we create the production to meet our demand. So hopefully that will not be a case. The cure will come out, and every country will have access to that cure, so that we are able to all, again, the humanity generally will come to a common ground. So, but I see a lot of positivity, but subject to how this pandemic gets treated over the next 18 to 20 months. Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Nabashis, for that. Mr. Narayan, if I can get your views as well on the, this aspect of, what Mr. Nabashis also mentioned. So we are looking at, a higher trend coming to us as well, and also there is a looming threat of, say, deglobalization as well. What are your views on this?
See, at this juncture, we don't see any threat for any of the job what is there in the country, because in spite of pandemic, the SLAs and deliverables have completely met. It's not let down. Quickly, people are able to swing in and able to set up the infrastructures with alacrity. So we don't expect any kind of it. And more so, in our country, the jobs are coming as not for not a menial works, correct? It's all knowledge based work is what it is coming more, which is going to continue because the knowledge base and the strong foundation is still in the country. So at immediate, we don't foresee any kind of threat for the jobs coming in or existing.
Okay, sure. Roshan, if I can get quick 1 minute view from you as well, and then we'll just take a couple of audience questions as well.
Yeah, thanks, Neeraj. I would probably, I think, my is have probably picked up upon how would India. So I'll probably cite that. What I would probably talk about is, I mean, if I had to speak about two ways in which global outsourcing, as well as the overall, I think it's the other side of the same coin. What might continue to thrive, right? Probably also kind of points to India or the other countries. I think there are two ways to look at it. One is, I think it's reasonable to expect that business transformation in post-COVID era is going to be the norm, right? And business transformation related work, which will go far beyond just profiting tech into existing business processes, would be a big would be would be an important opportunity for most technology and ITS companies as well. It will also bump people up the value chain. So this transformation continues to be very relevant. It will probably become more relevant than it is today. The second piece also that we are also to see some behavioral in terms of someone spoke about it, human interface and a high incorporation of technology in a lot of basic human-centric points. Now, what this will also do is potentially accelerate adoption of technology in Western markets, which in a way again will open up windows of opportunity for technology and outsourcing work, move up the value chain. It will also probably lead to more consulting-led work, right? Which incidentally also has more margins. So these are two things that I see happening. One is business transformation becoming more relevant, and second is technology picking up more consulting outsourcing opportunities. So these are things that I mean I'm sticking my neck out.
Thank you, Roshan, for that. Since we have we're almost to the end of the panel. There, I would just request our panelists to just continue for another 5 minutes. There instead of 2 minutes. Aspect of it. We just have a couple of questions. Which I would like to pick from the questions which have been asked by the audience there. Rajesh, if I can bring you here. While there have been a number of questions been put up there. I think there is two themes which are coming in there. One is in terms of how the social distancing in the office would get carried out. Would there be some support available through certain apps, and how the social distancing can be managed not just by the employees themselves, but aided through some of the other measures on that. Is there any thought process on that aspect of it? Do you see that happening? The second is that there are questions respect to the centralized AC usage aspect of it. There are a lot of fears in people's mind on the centralized AC usage, the big office spaces that we have. So if you could just touch upon these two in just a couple of minutes, that would help. And I understand there are certain evolving guidelines as well, on these matters. So we can keep that in that perspective.
So quick answer to your question in 1 minute. One is from a social distancing perspective. One immediate answer is that yes, there are apps which are available which can tell you from a distancing perspective. But in a short term, the way we are looking at it is because not every client will come in with 100% population within offices. Most of our clients are talking about 15 to 20% to start with. So what will happen is that it will be relatively easy to monitor social distancing within offices. And typically, I mean, some of the easy, low-hanging fruits, for example, making diagonal seatings, making team A, team B come on alternate days. And you also decide which set of people will come to office and why would they come, for example. So, I mean, for example, you have sufficient signages in meeting rooms. Most practical thing I would say is, if you were to take out chairs from meeting rooms or workstations and make them sit diagonal. So there will be multiple ways by which we can do this. I'm happy to answer any of these questions in case if our email IDs can be shared. And on the air conditioning, I think that's something which, honestly, from a CBRE's view, there are no conclusive evidences that, COVID-19 is an airborne disease. But any effort that we do only qualifies as a preventive measure. So what you're saying is, we're monitoring indoor air qualities. We're recommending maximum fresh air ventilation in all closed environments. And we are actually following all guidelines which are laid in by ISHRE and ASHRE. And like I said earlier, we have to educate and encourage acceptance of higher temperature, room temperatures. Earlier we were talking about 22 plus minus 1. We're now saying, ISHRE also recommends, if we can make it higher than 24 degrees, and also, increase the relative humidity between 40 to 70%. Basically, it will help so that the virus does not survive. So these are big subjects, frankly, with not too much of clarity, but at this point, we are following all the recommendations and guidelines of ISHRE and ASHRE. And there are other solutions of using ultraviolet, and there are more technologies coming in this section, which I'm happy to answer in case if in details at a later point.
Thanks for the the answer. Thank you very much for the same. I think given the paucity of time, let me get a wrap on this session. I think it's been a very good discussion. We had a number of insights coming in from the developers, the occupier leadership as well, and also from a facility management perspective. Some on the timely topic that we were facing as well in terms of the resumption of work, and also some of these short to medium term to long term trends that you will see from a leases perspective, some of the pressures that we are facing from employee productivity, employee health, and some of the concerns and how some of the mitigation can happen. We were also joined by Dr. Swati Maheshwari to give us some insights on that. I think for me, when I see this discussion, I think there are three words which kind of strike me. One, that this is kind of putting us a lot more focus on integration. Integration of the work and life balance, integration of how the concerns of employee are now the concerns of the well-being of the employees also are clearly integrated with the concerns of the organization, not only in office but also in home as well. And we saw a number of examples how organizations are dealing with that. I think inclusiveness again comes in there with the fact that there is some method which have been tried and tested now and also perfected, if I may use that. Some of the roles and some of the scenarios which would bring us a lot more diversity, a lot more availability of people as well. So it should help us include be more inclusive in that sense there. Then in terms of efficiency, I think efficiency, whether it from a purely from a cost perspective, purely from a time perspective, being more attractive, for growth in business, from an India perspective, and also for the business operations that we're doing. I think that also comes in much stronger. There, Devashish did highlight some of the aspects on how India could benefit from the globalization trend that we are seeing. And also that if let's say there is a extension of COVID beyond certain amount of challenge there, then there could be certain amount of let's say nationalistic tendency also may come through as well. But that is something as kind of was highlighted in the discussion, that India is a big talent pool. So we are looking at a lot of talent arbitrage to happen, not only from a cost arbitrage perspective, and the fact that we have moved the value chain from a work profile that India gets today. So all in all, it seems that that from the discussion that there are some good positive trends as well, for businesses to watch out for and focus and reorient their efforts, while they keep their strong efforts in protecting the employees and also running their operations around that. So with this, let me thank my panelists and thank the audience as well, for their time and support, and also for writing in some of the questions. I would request the organizers to, that is CII, to keep a note of some of these questions, and if we are able to provide some of the answers subsequently as well, would be happy to kind of support the effort. So thank you very much everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to all the panelists and speakers and delegates for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, leader.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing this session.
Thank you. You all.